For the next couple of weeks, you are going to be working on your project in Razor Pages. So it's your final project in this class. And the instructions are here. But basically, you're going to create an application similar to the workout app. Um, you need at least two model classes, and the classes have to be related. But what you create that app on is totally up to you. So I do have examples if you're searching for something to do, maybe friends and then categories of friends like where you know them from, games and gaming platforms. If you're into wildlife, birds and climate zones. Okay. Or, if you've got a lot of projects going on, projects, and then the type of project, like home improvement, school, or something like that. Okay. It's kind of endless as far as what you could do this on. Um, one of the models that you create has to have at least five properties, which includes the ID, and the other one should have at least two, which includes the ID. Um, you do need to include the data annotations for size and display name and anything else that you think is necessary. You do not need to add a key or a foreign key annotation because we're going to be following code first conventions for that. But you do need to include the navigation properties. Those are critical for scaffolding and generating the context file and generating the database and tables in general. So I do have an example for you to look at. This is not something that you are going to be able to download and try to copy and customize. That is not going to work. You have to create this project from scratch. Okay. But this link will take you to the repository and you can actually download it. If you click on code and choose download zip, you can save it into your download folder and then double click and you can extract it. And then you can go into the extracted, the non-zipped folder and find the SLN file, the solution file, and double click to launch it. Okay, and I believe I already have it launched. Okay, and so once you launch it, you will notice that there are migrations, but the database is not going to exist on your machine. So you are going to have to create it in order to run the app. So you always want to do a build anytime you download one of these apps. Okay. And this says it's up to date. The first time you run it, it'll probably say succeeded. And then I'm just going to double check to see what I called this. So the database is PD app. I'm going to go over into my Server Explorer and make sure I don't have one called that. And I will show you what you need to do. Okay, so do I have one called PD app? No, I don't. All right. So you run your build and then you go into the Package Manager console and you key in Update Database. Okay, and this is using this particular project is .NET 8. And so for this to work, you do have to have the .NET 8 SDK installed. So how can you tell what version this is? Right click, go into Properties, and it says .NET 8. Okay? And if you click Install Other Frameworks, it takes you to the SDK page for Visual Studio. And you have to have these SDKs in order to run that version of the project. So for .NET 8, I'm on a Windows machine. I would go into x64 and then it'll download and I can install it. Okay. Likewise, if for some reason I didn't have .NET 9 installed, I could download from here. Just click on x64. Okay, and then I could install everything I need to run it. Okay, so if you come in here and you do update database and it has errors, it's probably because you're out of sync. You don't have the right version of the .NET SDK. Okay, so um, this creates the database, and I'm going to go double check to make sure now that it's here. Let me refresh. And I called it PD app. So here it is. Tables. You can see the two tables. Categories is my small one, just ID and name. And then resources is the longer table. I've got a primary key and the foreign key. Okay, so I do have all of that in there. In this particular project, I did the um, seed data differently, and the seed data is not going to populate until I run the application. That's different than how we did it in the workout app. For the workout app, you could right click, you could see the data right away. This method of seeding is not going to take place until we run the application. So the seed data is not in the context file. It's kind of in a separate little file all by itself. So another difference with this, doing it this way, is that you don't put in the primary key. It generates the key. So that's why I didn't add the primary key, but that does make it harder to figure out what the foreign keys are. Um, I just happen to know that this is going to be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I can kind of figure out what numbers to put in. Okay. Um, so at this point, I can run it. When I run it, it is going to seed the database. And you can see what I did. So I did put a background graphic in, and I went dark up on the title bar. And then I added a bootstrap carousel to my landing page. So this displays for a certain amount of time, and then it scrolls on to the next picture, which I thought was kind of cool, super easy to put in. Okay. And then you can see that I've got my little icon here, and I kept some text. Okay. And then here is my list page and my category page and my privacy page. And you can see what I did for styling. Okay, so that's what I did for this app. And you can take a look at the different files to see what I did. Let's go over to Solution Explorer. So if we take a look under Pages and Index, this is the code for the carousel. Super easy to use. Basically, that is kind of canned code, and I basically just add my images to it. So that was pretty easy to add. And so this just kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what you could do with your project. And so back to the requirements. So by all means, guys, you can download that and take a look at it. Feel free to use the carousel if you like it. Um, but when you're working on your project, okay, you need two model classes, at least five properties, including ID, and one second one should have at least two, and one of them can be the ID. Once you get those models created and you get the navigation properties inserted, I want to see them. So you need to send them to me. You can email them to me. You can pop into live stream hours, show me during live stream class, but I want to see them, okay? Because I want to make sure that they're correct before you do anything else. Because otherwise, if you have problems with your models, you're going to end up having to redo portions of your project, and I don't want that to happen to you. So I need to check them. Okay, so you're going to send those to me. I'm going to take a look at them. And once I've said, yep, they're okay, then you can move forward. Okay, so once you get the okay, then you can create these separate folders inside pages. And let me see, show you that. Okay, so if we look at my models, I have category and resources, and I'm pluralized this. So when I went to do my folders, well, category can go into categories, not a problem. But I've already got this pluralized, so I had to name my folder different because you cannot name the folder the exact same as the model. Okay, you'll get all sorts of errors. So I had to name this folder differently, but it still works. Okay, but I wanted to point that out. Um, so you will create these folders and then you will scaffold one of them, scaffold the views in one of them. And at that point, you can generate your context class. Okay. And then once you get the context class, you are going to have to edit that and add the second DB set property for the other model class because you need both tables created. Okay. And you'll notice that I've got the table names pluralized here as well. Okay. And after that, you can do your seed data. Um, I think it may be easier to do the seed data in the context file, just like we did it in the workout application. But if you wanted to do it in a separate file, I do have a separate file here that you can look at. But this is harder just because you're not adding the primary key. It won't let you doing it this way. And if you have foreign key, you kind of have to figure out what the primary key is going to be just by kind of counting because they are in sequence numerically. Let's see. So once you have everything scaffolded and you have created your seed data, you're going to go ahead and run a build and do the migrations. Super important that you remember that whatever version of .NET your project is in, your entity framework needs to be the same version. I mean, you can go with the most current update, but it has to be the same version. Okay? And you'll have to add entity framework before you can run migrations. Okay, because migrations are entity framework. Okay. Once you have added entity framework and you run your migrations, go ahead and do a build and check SQL Server Object Explorer to make sure your tables are there. And just keep in mind, and I kind of showed you this on my project, is, if you put your project up on GitHub and then you download it on a different computer, you are going to have to update database to actually create the database on that local computer. Because the databases they don't get uploaded to GitHub. Okay, so those are local only on your computer. Let's see. Once you have created the databases, then you're going to run the application and make sure all of the CRUD functions work for each of those tables that you created. And at this point, if you got all of the CRUD functions working, honestly, the rest is just kind of icing on the cake because it's adding the CSS to make the pages look good. And you can do as much styling as you want, but at the minimum, I want a background graphic added to your project. I want a graphic added to at least one CS HTML page. And in the example that I ran, which I can actually run again, I've got graphics in a couple different places. Adding a graphic to the brand does count as adding a graphic. So if what you want to do is add a background graphic and add one to the brand, that counts. So I put a little Font Awesome icon here, and I have a background graphic, and that would really be all I'd need. Okay? But I kind of like this very cool carousel, so I added that as well. But if that's what you guys want, that is fine. And interestingly, this background, I let it repeat because it actually looks good repeating. A lot of backgrounds don't look good, but you can't, like here, you can kind of see the seam, but it does not look bad repeating, so I allowed it to repeat. Okay. Um, so as far as graphics go, you need a background graphic, you need at least one additional graphic on a page. You're going to need to change the text color of your headings or links and change the background color of an element in your pages. So it can be the nav bar, paragraphs. You could add a div behind the paragraphs like we did in the workout app. And you can see I did the same thing here. Okay, I've got kind of a color added behind so that I can see my commands better. Change the color of the buttons in the create and edits. Okay, and you can use either a Bootstrap button color or you can use inline CSS, okay, whichever. You're going to need to adjust your navigation bar in the layout page, and you'll have to add the index page for each class, which is what I did here. So in the PD list, I've got the index page there, and for the categories, I've got my page there as well. Okay, and then you need to adjust your landing page, your home index page, and your privacy page. Do not keep the default text. Okay, they should go with your theme. Okay, and once you've got all of this done, you need to create a video of the application. Make sure you show the CRUD functionality for each class. So if I was going to do a video on mine, I would go into my PD list. I would create an activity, show the details, edit the activity, and then I might delete an activity. Okay. It might be the one I added or a different one. For categories, you have to do, or for your second one, you'd have to do the same thing. So I'd create a new one, maybe edit that one or edit a different one, display the details, and delete one of them. Okay. So that is what your video should show. And then lastly, upload the project to GitHub. And what you need to turn in is the video and the link to your GitHub project. And this is how you are going to be graded. Okay, so this kind of lays out all the points. Total points is 100. So once you get all of this done, then you will post to the discussion board. And you have 2 weeks to get this done. So here is the discussion and what is due on the 28th is you will post a link to GitHub, your GitHub repo, and you will add your video that you've turned in to me for the project. Okay, those are the two things that you will be adding to the discussion. And then during the next week, you will review three of your peers' projects. And by the third, which is the last day of the semester, um, you will reply to three of the posts indicating what you like best about the app, and then any suggestions that you have for the next version of the app. Okay? And that is what you need to turn in for your final project. Okay. And again, I do have some resources. These are similar to what you saw in lesson 11. But if you run into problems or have questions, please let me know because I am happy to help you. And for some problems with these projects, you are probably going to have to see me during live stream hours or during one of my computer labs in class because uh, these can be very difficult to solve via email.